Welcome to Spirit Club, a podcast and community where we talk about what's really running the show, your inner world. I'm Angel, your host, your guide, and your spiritual bestie. Around here, we're all about doing the inner work because your outer reality is only ever a reflection of what's going on within. We practice radical ownership, freedom in faith, surrendering our path to God, and trusting our intuition like our lives depend on it. Because honestly, they do. So take a breath, open your heart, and let's dive in. Welcome back, Spirit Club. You create your reality, and I'm going to show you how. Welcome to this week's episode, which will be practical as usual in nature, but this is the bread and butter, baby, of what we do here at Spirit Club. Creating your reality, shifting your external world, doing the inner work to make that change. That is literally what we do here. And what I'm going to talk about today actually used to be a group program that I ran called Spirit Club. Shout out to any of my old group program Spirit Club listeners. And this was pre-podcast, so I used to run this as a group program. And then I just sort of graduated it into a podcast. And that's what we do here at Spirit Club. So without further ado, let's talk about how to create your reality. So first of all, what do I mean by shift your reality? Just to be clear, what I mean is, how do I make changes in the external world by doing the inner work? How do I work on my inner world to thereby see my external world change? Super powerful. And I have sort of summarized it into 4 steps. Keep in mind, there are nuances, there are subtleties, and those nuances and subtleties are the things that we work through on this podcast. So I'm sure any of them that you're coming up against, you can search through past episodes and find something on it. And while this is something I show you with the help of God on this podcast, I also do this work personally. This is how I live my life. And I have been writing about that on my Substack. It's called Living the Work. So if you want to see how I apply all of this in real time in my life, you can go see that on my Substack. I've linked it in the show notes. Okay. So let's just start with a little bit of theory, a little bit of background, a little bit of foundation about why we create our own reality. If you are listening to this podcast, you are probably on board with that belief. But you may know people who feel like the world, in other words, reality, is happening to them. But we here at Spirit Club are talking about how reality is happening for us. Our reality is a reflection of us. But why? Why is that true? So let's kind of look at the mechanism. So first of all, our reality, what we are experiencing, is based on our perception. Okay? It's based on our perception. So I can be watching something and my friend next to me can be watching the same scene, and we will perceive it differently based on who we are and what we believe to be true. Okay, so for example, here in Greece, you will often come across situations where Greeks are holding up traffic or holding up a line because they're chit-chatting, whatever. And I think it's funny. But I might be sitting, maybe I have a Canadian friend visiting with me, and she can be watching the same scene of traffic being held up because of people chit-chatting, and she might get frustrated, angry. She might feel like it's ruining her day. Whereas I'm watching the same scene, but I'm perceiving it as funny and as kind of endearing and a reflection of what I love about Greek life. Okay, so you can see our perception of the same scene happening in front of us is creating our experience, how we feel, how the rest of our day goes, and so on. Okay, so that is sort of one of the foundations of how we create our reality. And that perception, how I'm perceiving that versus how she's perceiving that, is based on things she believes to be true, things I believe to be true, who I am being, who she is being. Secondly, our beliefs then shape our choices. So they're not only shaping how we're perceiving what's happening in front of us, they're also shaping what we choose to do in life, the literal actions we take, the decisions we make. You know, I decided to move across the world, and that was based on the beliefs that I have in my intuition, in God leading me, and so on. But someone who doesn't have those beliefs would not be able to move across the world. So we're going to experience different things in life because we believe different things. Therefore, we're making different choices. Okay, so what I just described are two very practical ways that we create our own reality. And really what I'm describing, just to be clear, is the law of attraction. Scroll way back to the secret to the law of attraction, and that's what we're talking about here. Anyway, so those are really practical ways, perception, the choices, decisions, and actions we take. But then there's also just the energy. We believe in energy here at Spirit Club. I mean, I think these days energy is a well-accepted concept. And our thoughts, our feelings, our behaviors, those are all comprised of energy. And that energy is acting like a signal to experiences that are a match. Okay, so who we are being, acting, feeling, thinking, and so on, is acting as a signal to, and then experiences that match it will be magnetized to us. And so if you are someone who believes they have bad luck and is down in the dumps about it, you're going to experience more bad luck. Therefore, further confirming that belief that you have. If you're someone who believes they have good luck, the opposite will be true. So I hope that's clear that that is why and how we are shaping our reality. That is how we are creating a reality. And now when we know that and understand that, we can wield it to our advantage. So let's talk about the steps, 4 steps. And I mean, we're going to talk about them linearly because that's just a nice way to understand things. But we all know this kind of thing isn't linear. There may be cycles in and out. But anyway, you get it. Okay, step 1 is identifying what you want. Identify what you want. This is often the first step of many things I talk about here on Spirit Club. And it's because it's giving us that North Star to point towards. You know, it's like, I don't know, you open up Google Maps and you put your destination in and it gives you a place to drive towards. Now, does that mean, so if right here today you're like, I want XYZ, does that mean you must forever steer towards that destination? No. And actually, that's an important part of this. You are going to have to get comfortable with letting go of the destination, with pivoting and all that sort of thing. But it's still very valuable to have an inkling of what we want, to have a place to direct our energy and attention. So step 1 is, what do I want? And in my experience working with people, what we want is harder to figure out than we realize. You'd think it would be simple and easy, but it gets cloudy. And I would say the main reason, there are many reasons and many blocks to figuring out what we want, but I would say what's getting in the way the most is that we have not been accustomed to listening to our hearts. We, especially, I would say millennials, I can't say the same of the generations that are following, but we, rather than listening to our hearts, we have followed a set blueprint to how life should go. So we have followed shoulds, which are not necessarily and quite likely not following the heart. So because we haven't been in a habit of following our hearts, the signal is not, the channel between heart and us is not super open. Therefore, it's not super clear what it is we want. And you can go back through, I've got many episodes on how to open the channel to your heart. But today we'll just talk about, okay, figuring out what you want. What are the ways to vision? What are the ways to set in Google Maps the destination? Many ways to vision. You can meditate with your future self, project down the road 2, 3, 5 years, and have a session with your future self. You can journal about a perfect day in the life. You can create a Pinterest board full of feelings, moods, vibes of what it is you want. And you can look at the lives of others that you envy and sort of like pull clues from there about what it is that you might want for your life. And as I said before, and I just want to add it again, it is okay that what that is, what that vision is, changes. And it's a normal part of the process. And so there was a prayer that I said earlier this week that I thought was really supportive. Okay, so you can try this prayer if it helps you. Dear God, I will walk wholeheartedly towards the calls of my heart, and I trust that you will redirect me, pivot me, nudge me where need be. Amen. Okay, so step 1, identify what it is that you want. Step 2 is about the blocks, both uncovering your blocks and unblocking. So what is a block? A block is a belief, limiting belief, standing in between you and your vision, standing in between you and what you want. There's a reason that you aren't living that vision. And the reason is this belief that's operating usually underneath the surface. Okay, so we've got to identify that block. And a lot of the time, these blocks are like we are blind to them. That's why we've continued to live in sort of not the reality that we're looking to live in. So many ways to identify blocks. I'll give you a few ways in today's episode. The first one is patterns. So looking at reoccurring patterns in your life, particularly reoccurring patterns that you don't like. Obviously, the reoccurring good patterns are also demonstrating beliefs that are operating underneath the surface, but they're demonstrating ones that you probably want to keep. So we're looking at patterns that you may not like. So for example, maybe you have the pattern of losing your job. Okay, I'm identifying this pattern. What must I believe about myself or the world in order for this reality to keep happening? I did a podcast, I think it was just the previous one, How You Do One Thing is How You Do Everything. This episode is very helpful to finding patterns. It's a great one. Go back and check it out. Okay, another way to identify blocks is to look at that vision that you have figured out what it is that you want. And you can look at somebody who might have a part of it, somebody who might be living that life that you want, and ask yourself, what is it that she has that I believe that I don't? What do I have to believe about this person or myself in order for that to be true for them and not true for me? So I'll give you an example. Let's say you're looking at someone who has the kind of relationship that you'd like to have. And when you ask yourself, okay, what is it about her that allows her to have that loving relationship and not me? And maybe what comes up is, her body. She has a beautiful body or something like that. Okay, so then you've figured out there's a block there that says, I only deserve loving relationships if my body is XYZ. Woo! That's a spicy limiting belief. Anyway, so that's how to use kind of the gap between where you are and where you want to be as a way to figure out your block. And one more way to identify blocks is to do a childhood deep dive. Go excavate your childhood around a particular topic. So let's say part of your vision includes a certain amount of wealth. You're going to go back to your childhood and you're going to ask questions about what was I told either directly or indirectly about money from my caregivers, from the community I grew up in. What did I learn about money? What do I believe is true about money today that I picked up from my childhood? This is where you'll find a lot of the blocks. And I won't get into this today, but it's because ultimately that's where they're all coming from, childhood. Okay, so we identified our block. Now we need to unblock. I make it sound so simple. Isn't that cute? Anyway, so this is where subconscious reprogramming comes in. These blocks, these limiting beliefs are housed in your subconscious, which, and I'll get into this in a minute, which can't always be addressed on the conscious level. So there are many therapies today now that address the subconscious level. Things like somatic therapies, nervous system work, breath work. There's To Be Magnetic. That's a very famous Lacey Phillips program. I did it back in the day around unblocking. There's self-hypnosis. There's hypnotherapy. I have my own personal subconscious reprogramming healings that I do for clients. There are many modalities that you can work with. But let me just say, as someone who's been doing this work on herself and with others for many years, I think that something is shifting. You know, we drew a line in the sand, and I did it myself personally, that said, you must do the work on the subconscious level, otherwise things won't work. And I believe that the line between the conscious and the subconscious are starting to blur now more than ever. I was having a conversation with a past guest about this, Dr. Lexi Stiles. This is quite a ways back now, maybe a year ago. And we were talking about how we're starting to see this, and maybe because so many people are willing to go excavating deeper, go do more inner and reflective work, that the line between the conscious and the subconscious isn't so black and white, isn't so crisp. And you know what, guys, I can't really explain to you why, but I can tell you that I shift my reality and I shift my beliefs all the time. And it's not explicitly conscious or subconscious, but it certainly involves the conscious. I mean, go look at my Substack. You can see me doing the work in real time, and I'm obviously using my mind, otherwise I wouldn't be able to write about it. So don't get too caught up on like, oh, I must sign up for a specific therapist, but know that a subconscious component will be a part of it. And you know, that might be like, sometimes when you get really reflective, you slow your brain waves down enough. Sometimes when you sit in prayer and quiet meditation, you do slow your brain waves down enough to be accessing the subconscious. Those are my 2 cents on that. Okay, so we did step 1 and 2. Step 1 was, what do you want? Step 2 was the blocks, identifying and clearing them. So now here we are, we see what we want. We moved what was in the way between where we are and where we want to be. So what do you think the next step is? We need to move towards that new reality. And how do we do that? We do that by who we are being. So we need to start to be the person who lives that new reality now, even though we're in the old reality. And what do I mean when I say who we are being? I mean how you move, how you make decisions, how you act, how you think, how you feel, how you interpret your feelings, how you hold yourself. It might be how you dress. It might be how you decorate your home, how you function at the workplace. Who you be needs to be a reflection of the new consciousness that you're creating. And that new reality that you're creating is going to have like a more empowered belief behind it, right? Because when we were clearing the limiting belief or the block that was in the way, we generally are transforming that belief into something that serves us better. So that new belief, how do I be someone who actually believes that new belief? Okay. So here's the thing. This step, gosh, I was trying to I'm like, what step's the hardest? I don't know. Right now for me, this step is the hardest, and here's why. As you make the shift to your inner world, the external world, which exists in the 3D, moves slower. It's more dense. It moves slower. So therefore there's a lag. You your beliefs may be ahead in the new reality, but your 3D hasn't shifted yet. And this is where it can be challenging. So what will come up here in that lag time is, here you are, you've upgraded your beliefs, but you're still currently living in this reality. And so you will be quote unquote tested. I say quote unquote because TBM and Lacey Phillips have dubbed that term. But basically what it means is you're still living in this reality, and therefore you're going to meet things that you don't like. That's why you've been trying to shift your reality. And you are going to have to act like the person who's in the new reality. Does that make sense? Okay, so it's like, I don't know, maybe you're dating and you've always dated unavailable men because of a certain belief that you have about yourself, your worth, and so on. Okay, I've done the inner work and I've upgraded the belief. Now, when I experience the unavailable man, the feelings, the thoughts, and the behaviors of the old reality are going to come up because you're used to them, because they're a habit, because they're probably a pattern you've been living for many years. Whereas the new way of being is brand new to you. It's going to take a minute for you to learn how to be that way. And that is where the test is. Are you going to choose the old patterns, behaviors, thoughts, emotions, or are you going to choose the new ones? I listened to a podcast sometime recently, the Out of Our Minds podcast. Check it out. It was sometime recently, and she basically talks about this choice point. She calls it a choice point, which I love. You are at a choice point. Do I choose the old way or do I choose the new way? And it can be very hard because you've got like a very predetermined like groove in your neural pathways in your experience of the old way. And that's where you need to fight against it. So yeah, it's hard. And I would also say that this period of step 3 is also difficult because it's going to test your resilience, right? I cannot tell you how long it will take for your external world to catch up with your internal world. I don't have an answer to that. I don't know that anybody does. Maybe it's fast. Maybe it's 2 years. And in that time, you will have to have resilience to hold being the new person. You will be battling doubt. Doubt's going to come up when you have to wait, right? Of course it is. And most of all, your faith will be tested. Okay, step 4. And this really isn't step 4, but anyway, step 4 is trust and surrender. And now I don't really think step 4 is step 4. It's really like kind of woven into the whole process. It's going to come up at different points where you are going to be asked to trust and surrender. And this step, it's almost like wiping all the other steps clear. It's like you had let's say you had a whiteboard and you're like, okay, I did step 1, 2, 3. And then you get to the trust and surrender step and you just like wipe it. Because really what it's asking is, it's asking you to surrender. Surrender the destination, surrender the timeline, surrender the exact outcome, surrender the how you're going to get there. We talk about surrender a lot here. There are specific episodes on how to surrender, so go back and check those out. But just know that as much as I've talked about this process as like a creative process for you on creating your life, while that is true, you're actually co-creating your reality with God. We are an extension of God. And God's plan for us, God's will for us is essentially to remember the loving beings that we are. Remember that we are a part of God. But there's a specific will or contract set forward for us that our souls have agreed to. And what we're trying to do with these creative processes is like check in and be like, oh, am I exercising my free will, as in my ego's will, or am I aligning my will with God's? And I think the more you iterate this process and the more that you co-create with God, the more you'll get closer to aligning with your soul's will, but you're going to get it wrong. We're human. That's what we're here to do. And so there's got to be built into this process a point where you go, okay, I'm not going to drive anymore. Or, oh, I lay down my plans and I lean into what God wants for me. And for some, this can be the most difficult part. But this is also where the most magic lies because, as we're exercising our free will, we can get really bullheaded. We could get, especially when like things are working, we're like, yes, I got this. I'm going for that destination that I put in Google Maps. And then God's like, I need you to delete the destination. And you're like, what? I was so sure. So yeah, this is where we let go. We release, we surrender. And we recommit to aligning our will with God's. Okay, that is how you create your reality. Easy peasy, right? Tell me about it. I would love to hear which step you're working through. Drop it in like Spotify comments, YouTube comments, whatever you got. And know that this is what we do here at Spirit Club. If you're new here, this is what we do every episode in some way or another. We're working through a block. We're working through the actions, the courage, all the sort of things that it takes to create your reality. So be sure to follow along for more episodes like this, and would love it if you'd share it with a friend so you can create your realities alongside one another, because honestly, me and my friends, we've done that before and it's very fun, very fun. Okay, that's it. Much love, Spirit Club.